but I'm really delighted that we have Dr. Heather Paladine joining us today. Dr. Paladine is going to be talking to us about how to build research skills with CERA and using national educational surveys for faculty and resident scholarly activity. So just to tell you a little bit about Dr. Paladine, she attended medical school at Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York and completed her residency in family medicine at the Oregon Health Sciences University in Portland. Then she's done fellowships in maternal and children's health care and faculty development. She also has received a Master's of Medical Education from the University of Cincinnati. Dr. Paladine is an active member of the New York State Academy of Family Physicians, where she's currently the president-elect. She's a former board member of STFM and currently chairs the CEFM Educational Research Alliance, or CERA. Her areas of clinical focus within family medicine are women's health, education, and technology. So with that, I'm delighted to have Dr. Paladine here with us today, and welcome everyone who's joining us. And I'll turn things over. So if you wanted to share screen and hop in.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about CERA, but then we'll also talk about like how that could be useful to your careers and think about maybe what areas of scholarship or research that you'd want to work on. You are welcome to email me at any time. I told Nancy that this was like a very fortuitous timing for this talk, because when we had our CERA steering committee meeting at the STFM conference, we were saying, you know, always one of the goals of CERA is to mentor new researchers, but part of that is to get the word out and just have people even know what we're doing. So I was very happy to come do this. Just to give you a little bit of background about CERA, you can see our vision is about excellent family medicine educational research. The way we do that is providing an infrastructure to do educational research surveys on a number of different groups, which I'll talk about in a minute, and also providing training and mentorship for new researchers. I mean, obviously, many people who submit to our surveys are experienced, but we have a particular focus on getting people who are newer at research to be able to successfully do educational survey research. So practically, we do about 5 surveys a year of different member groups. I should mention, sorry, I think it's on the next slide, but CERA stands for CAFM Educational Research Alliance. We always joke that it's like an acronym of acronyms. CAFM is the Council of Academic Family Medicine. So the organizations that make up that are STFM, AFMRD, which is the residency directors, ADFM, which are the chairs, and NAPCRAG, which are the which is kind of research and scholarship in general. So it's not specifically an STFM organization, although it does have support from STFM, but it's really like part of that larger umbrella group. As part of that, so we do surveys of residency program directors. That's most popular to ask questions of. So we ask program director questions twice a year, clerkship directors, department chairs, general membership, which can be members of all of those organizations, but we can also do subsets if there's things people are particularly interested in, like, you know, clinically active physicians or behavioral science faculty, or, you know, different subsets. It depends a little bit on what is identified in those groups' membership data. We're also working to do surveys of family medicine residents and medical students. That's a little trickier because they're not, you know, although some residents and students are members of STFM and NAPCRAG, it's relatively small amounts. So we're working with the AAFP to try to do those surveys. That's been a little bit more challenging in terms of response rate. So that's kind of one of my projects as taking over last year as the steering committee chair, to try to do better with our resident and student surveys. We also have a clearinghouse of data. So in addition to doing surveys yourself, and I'll talk about how people can apply to put their questions in our CERA surveys, we also have a data clearinghouse that you and residents and students, I should have included, I know many of you work with residents and students, can also use for scholarship. That is also something to think about, again, particularly for those of you who work with residents and students. CERA can be, the timeline can be a little challenging for residents and students because all of these surveys are a competitive application process. So if you, if you're a resident and you submit for a survey of program directors and you don't get accepted, you have to wait 6 months. If these other, surveys are just once a year, if you're not accepted, it doesn't fit in as well with a resident or student timeline. But the clearinghouse of data from previous surveys is available all the time. So it's something to think of if residents or students are interested in scholarship, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then, like I mentioned, we have a goal of providing mentorship and education, particularly to newer researchers. This is the acronym of acronyms that I mentioned, but just so you kind of understand like where CERA is, it's an umbrella organization that focuses on educational research, but particularly educational survey research. Big issues that I think a lot about as the CERA chair, response rate, like that's really important if you're going to use data for anything. And again, that was a challenge for us, particularly for medical student and resident surveys. One thing we try to do, if any of you, I don't think any of you had said that you were program directors, but I can tell you as a program director, I get so many surveys. And before CERA, it was even worse. Now I actually have a thing when someone tries to survey me and it's not in CERA, I send them a nice email saying, maybe you haven't heard of CERA, you should do your survey through that. But one of our goals is to increase response rate and generate better information by limiting the number of surveys that go to all of these groups. And again, residency program directors, like particularly everyone wants to survey us all the time, it seems like. But the other groups too, I mean, I'm sure, even as general faculty, people are always sending around surveys and saying like, can you do the survey? Can you send it to residents? Can you, can you fill this out? So the idea is if we have these official surveys that go out once or twice a year, it'll improve response rate, which it definitely has done. And also it improved the quality of the responses because people know, okay, I'm going to do this one 20-minute survey once a year, or this, 20-minute surveys twice a year, instead of all these kind of random surveys that come periodically. We also focus a lot, although we have usually about a CERA survey includes about 4 or 5 groups that have like submitted through a competitive process to get their questions on the survey. So we limit them to 10 questions each. And then there's also demographic questions that we repeat each time. So they're not super short surveys, but I do think a lot, and our other survey directors too think a lot about survey length when we're doing this survey, because that I know from filling out surveys myself, again, that can be particularly challenging as you jump into a survey and then 20 minutes later, you're just like barely, you're barely into it, and it's much easier to just drop the survey if it's sort of like a huge long thing. Hopefully after this, oh, Susie.
Yeah, Heather, so I will speak up. This was a learning curve for me, but I've learned so much doing CERA. I think I've done 3 surveys now through CERA, and the first year, actually, we hit it out of the park. I met Joanna Drowis, and she and I and a couple of other clerkship directors did a survey on faculty development because that was our area. And we actually were published in Academic Medicine. So it was a really like well-received publication and really timely for the moment. The next one, we struggled. I think it took 8 different submissions to finally get that one published in Primer. And everyone kept saying, yeah, like, so what? This isn't an important topic. So the window had just passed on faculty development at that point. And it was about virtual faculty development. So ironically, I think we were just ahead of or behind our time. I'm not sure which one. And now we just are doing another one that's been accepted with revisions on professional development needs of clerkship directors for their own their own professional development. So I'm excited about that, but it is certainly a learning curve. And writing survey questions is a full science. And then the first survey, I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't understand statistics very well. That's not my strength. So having a mentor that did statistics was really, really, really important. But the second and the third surveys, we realized, oh, like we really need like a statistics person when we were planning the questions. And that helped a lot to think about how we should ask questions, because we were already thinking about how we would present the data and how we would compare it in a much more realistic way. So I'll give that plug for CERA. I really appreciated CERA and grown a great deal through it. It's certainly benefited my professional growth and my career.
Yeah, thank you. So you brought up a number of really great points that I want to reinforce. I mentioned, our goal to mentor newer researchers, or, really we're happy to mentor everybody. Everyone who gets accepted for a CERA survey gets a mentor assigned, and we've newly, because statistics and data analysis are such a common topic that people really need mentoring on. You may not have those resources in your home department. We've added a separate area to the application where people can indicate kind of what level of mentoring that they need, and in particular, if they need mentoring related to statistics and data analysis. So the groups that are accepted get a mentor who helps them to refine their questions, refine their hypothesis, and then follows through with the whole process of data analysis to publication. So if any of you are thinking like, wow, I don't think I could do that because I don't have the resources for that, I wouldn't know how to analyze this survey, that's exactly what CERA helps with. It can be, sometimes people bring up, oh, I submitted a topic for CERA and I got rejected, or have tried to send it in a few times. There's a few things that can help with that. And first of all, I'll just mention, I put up some topic examples to like pique your interest. I hope these are some of the great topics that have been done in CERA, and you can see that they're really broad. And I think there's a second slide too that has even more. There's a ton more, and I'll show you the website in a minute so that you can see them. But really, we're up for anything. We want people to bring their ideas and their interests. So I hope that this kind of sparks some of your ideas. You can ask for a pre-survey mentor too, especially if you've tried to submit something, and we try to give a lot of feedback. The survey submissions all get reviewed, and then people get the reviewer comments. So if you're not accepted for a survey, you get a lot of comments and hopefully constructive information to help you revise and resubmit. But also if people want to ask for a mentor at that point too, to even help get their proposal ready, we have mentors who are ready to help with that. So again, it's sort of a no experience required thing. Great, and is working on a CERA survey. I'm so great to hear that many of you have had experience. Of course, you're telling me the positive things. Feel free to shout out the things that you don't like about CERA too. People often complain about, sending in information, having to resubmit, getting their hopes crushed because they had this great survey idea that didn't get accepted. Asking for a mentor at that point, which we offer to everyone, but again, I realize that it may get kind of, it may get kind of overlooked in the rejection letter. I don't like rejection letters either. You're welcome to do that. The other thing to think about is to really be strategic about which survey you want to apply to. Everyone wants to survey program directors, and I don't just say that because I'm a program director and I feel like I answer so many surveys, but typically, again, we'll accept 4 to 5 survey proposals for each survey. The program director survey usually gets about 20 submissions. So there are a lot of even good topics that we're not able to accept, just again, because, you know, we can't have program directors filling out like 100 question surveys. They're already doing like about 60 questions. We really don't want to increase it more than that. Clerkship directors are sort of a medium popularity group, but it's good to think about, especially if your question might be related to curriculum. Are you interested in medical school curriculum or just residency curriculum? Chairs don't get surveyed a lot, and they're a great group. I mean, they're in charge of all of us. So if you have an idea and you're just like reflexively thinking, I want to ask residency program directors, maybe think like, hey, is this a question that I'd want to ask chairs? Like maybe chairs would know even more. Is this a question I would want to ask the general membership or some subcategory of general membership? Because that, you know, all of the groups get many fewer submissions than program directors. And then again, we're working hard on the resident and student survey. We're doing it again this year with a new strategy, trying to get the response rate up. If that works, we'll have an open call for proposals again next year. And that's important because actually a lot of people ask program director questions that they really should be asking residents. And probably it's similar with clerkship directors and students. What do your residents think about this curriculum? Like we shouldn't really be asking program directors to hypothesize, like read the minds of their residents. We should go to residents directly. So again, that's one of my big projects as chair, is to get the resident survey humming along. So for those of you who haven't gone through it, this is a little bit about the process for a proposal for CERA. These are not the actual dates. The actual dates are on the website, which you can click on here, or honestly, I just Google STFM and CERA and find that site. So for every survey, there's like a month every year that is the call for proposals. Program directors does go out twice a year. And then you can see the survey dates are a couple months later. The meantime is like getting your mentor and refining your survey questions and getting the survey all together. CERA goes through the IRB for you. Like we use the AAFP's IRB. So after people submit all of their questions and then the 4 or 5 teams are accepted, we send out information from the reviewers and ask them to work with their mentor to refine their questions for resubmission. Then whoever the survey chair is puts together the questions with the demographic questions, and our wonderful tech guru, Ray Biggs, puts the survey together in SurveyMonkey so we can see what it looks like all together. And then we pre-test it a little bit more. We send it out to groups that are similar to the survey group, but not a member of the survey group. So like for department chairs, I might find my friends who are like, you know, vice chair of something. They're not going to get the department chair survey, but I want to test it out on them because they know similar to, you know, they have kind of similar ways that they'll be thinking of questions and answering questions. For program directors, I'll send it out to people that I know who are associate program directors, for example, so that we can kind of try out, because you never, if you've done surveys before too, you know, you never really exactly know. The person answering the survey is the one who's going to know how to answer the question. It's hard to know that ahead of time when you're designing the survey. Then the groups get their data back, and each group has exclusive access to their data for 90 days. And so they work with their mentor during that time to put it together, to do the data analysis, to get ready for publication. I know 90 days doesn't sound like that much, and most groups don't actually publish, obviously, within 90 days, but it's really just to give you a head start, because after the 90 days, that information goes up on the CERA website, and members from any of those academic family medicine organizations can access it. No one, just to reassure you, I don't think anyone has ever jumped the data, the team that's actually doing the survey and published it, and we have information up there. We don't track who accesses the data, but that wouldn't really be ethical. It's people more like looking at the data to answer questions that could go across surveys, or even looking at the demographic information and how that changes from previous surveys. But it's also just to give people a little push to think like, hey, this first 90 days, you should really be working with your mentor and analyzing the data and kind of getting it ready for manuscript and publication. Let me show you what the CERA website looks like real quick, and then I will go into some of the what types of things people might want to survey. So again, I just look at CERA and STFM to find it because it's the easiest way to find it for me. And you can see the survey schedule up there, and you can see, I love this like counting thing because it shows we've had a lot of successful papers and publications with CERA, and most survey groups do write a completed manuscript based on their CERA survey. Then if I scroll down, there's information on submitting a CERA proposal. That'll just be open if one of the calls for proposals is open. So if okay, it's the time to, the program director call for proposals is open. If you click on that, you'll get to that submission. We are always recruiting mentors. So if you think of anyone who would be a great CERA mentor, you can do it there. Usually people get a mentor by going through the submission process. But again, if someone wants a mentor ahead of time, we're happy to do that too. But then the part I wanted to show you was this access past survey data. This is the kind of data clearinghouse. This is great information for all of you to be able to use in your projects. Again, you don't have to apply for it. It's free for you to use as a STFM member or member of any of those other groups. And it's also good for residents and students to use. Remember, students can be members of STFM or NAPCRAG for free. Residents, I think it's like $25 for STFM membership. So if you have residents and students who are interested in survey research, this would be a great place for them to go. We list the data different ways by topic and by audience. If you're at all thinking of a CERA survey, of course, it's really important to go through and search and make sure the topic hasn't been done. One of the biggest reasons that surveys are not accepted is that survey was just done last year. If it's been like 5 years and you want to see how things have changed, one group did a survey on point of care ultrasound. 5 years later, it's a very different environment for point of care ultrasound. They want to compare the questions. That's totally legitimate. But if you're looking at a topic and it was just done last year, we're probably not going to accept that topic unless you have a really different angle on it. So you can use it for that, and then you can also look at the data and see, maybe I think one group did. There was a survey of program directors about burnout, and then there was a survey of program directors about like meaning in work. And so, those were two separate groups that submitted those surveys with separate topics. But then a group went back and said, hey, we surveyed you have data on program directors at the same time about their burnout levels and about how they feel about their meaning in work. Is that connected? Do people who feel a higher level of meaning in their work have less burnout? Turns out they do. But that was an example of going back and using this data for secondary analysis. So when you're thinking about a CERA survey or really any kind of research, it starts with the brainstorming. What would you like to learn? Often we are looking for something. I know sometimes I'm looking for some information and it's not there. And I think, oh, that would be a really good topic. And then, of course, the two critical questions, so what and who cares? Like, what is going to be what is this going to do? Is this going to change how we teach? Is this going to change how we, run our curricula for residents or students? how is it going to have an effect? A literature review is important. Again, particularly a review of what's been done in CERA, because you hate to go through all that work and then get an email saying that was just done. If the topic was done, but you feel like pieces are missing, really emphasize that in your proposal. That's going to be really important. What is your different take on it? Always good to look for validated questions as well. We don't do question validation, so it's not, it's not as high level of like question validation as you'll see in some published articles. So if you can find some questions that have already been validated, that can be really helpful to put in. And those questions are often, they've been through a lot more like rigorous pilot testing. It's a lot easier to take those questions than coming up with your own questions. But most CERA surveys are people coming up with their own questions. Thinking about the group that you want to hear from is really important. And again, it is fine to survey residency directors. Just keep in mind that that's a much more competitive survey, just in terms of everyone wants to survey residency directors. So if you do have a topic that you're really interested in, think about, would I be interested in learning about this from another group? For example, the point of care ultrasound group, they did survey residency directors, but say they were thinking about that and thinking, oh, the residency director survey is really competitive. It would be super interesting also to hear what's going on in medical school clerkships about point of care ultrasound. Is that happening in the family medicine clerkship? Or to survey, the general membership of these organizations and say, what is your personal experience with point of care ultrasound? Are you doing it? Do you plan to take a course? All of those things. So again, you can use the same topic that you're interested in, but think about maybe some of the other groups that are less surveyed. And you can do both. Again, the point of care ultrasound people did a similar survey for residency directors and clerkship directors to look at the curricula for both residents and students. Your question is key. So one thing that we find out, one kind of like stumbling block, is really thinking about hypothesis when you're trying to do a survey. Often what we get is people just wanting to know, how often does something happen in residency or medical school? Do you have a curriculum? I wonder how many residency programs have a point of care ultrasound curricula. I'm going to do a survey and find out. It's not really that great in terms of like publication and also the impact, like the so what and the who cares. You're going to find out, yeah, 25% of residency programs have a POCUS curriculum. What does that say for the future? What am I going to do with that? More importantly is to think about, sorry, let me go to the, oh, maybe I took it out, but sorry, I had a whole slide about hypothesis and I took it out. I'm sorry, not organized enough today. But a better thing would be to say, maybe larger programs at university medical centers have more point of care ultrasounds, or maybe program directors who do point of care ultrasound themselves in their clinical practice are more likely to have point of care ultrasound in their curricula. So think about, like, what is your hypothesis? How can you connect that? And that will also make the survey results more valuable, because maybe you'll say, program directors should have more training themselves in point of care ultrasound, or maybe it's a resource issue that departments need to look at, for example. This is just a brief part about the application overview. It's fairly straightforward, what you would expect: background, objectives, aims, and hypotheses. Hypotheses are key. Methods of analyses, we just want to know that you have a thought about data analysis. Again, we'll provide mentorship if people need for the actual data analysis, and it is fine to ask for mentorship on this area. What we're looking for is more than just like descriptive statistics. We don't want to say just 25% of programs are using point of care ultrasound. That's the extent of our study. that could be a good start, but it really should get into some more comparisons. We also ask, for most surveys, we ask for a draft of questions. That can be really helpful for me as someone who's reviewing surveys to really see like, what are they asking? What is the real aim of this? Do the questions reflect that? You'll have time after you submit to revise the questions together with your mentor, so they don't have to be in the final perfect form, but it is really important to think about how your questions reflect your hypothesis and how they're like testing your hypothesis. This is a little bit about the secondary data analysis, which I think is underused. So we talked about this after the 90-day that the groups that did the submission get their data. It goes onto that website and you can all look it up. You do have to log in to get the actual data, but you can get it. It's the actual raw survey data in Excel. So then you can take it to your data analysis person and work on it. As saying everything's been secondary data analysis. That's great because you don't have to apply competitively. You know, it's not a competitive application. You don't have to worry about timelines like, oh, we just missed the chair survey. We have to wait another year to do the chair survey. You don't have to worry about things like that. You can go through and just kind of look through and see what might spark your interest. And it's often a great way to get ideas for research or to find groups that are doing kind of similar topics. When we talked about the website, although again, I just Google it. You can download the data. This has gone through the AFP IRB, but doing secondary analysis, you should check with your local IRB if they want you to get their approval to be able to do that. It's important to acknowledge the group that did the original research, although again, usually the people I've seen who've been successful for secondary analysis, they're not asking similar questions to the original group. They're doing something that like goes across surveys or uses the demographic information and does it in kind of a different way than the original group was looking at. And then CERA is very open to innovation. We right now are doing these set surveys and my goal is to make them even better. We've done a few things though in the past that have been a little out of the box. Probably the biggest one is that we did a survey. We survey residency directors, right? So we did a survey of residency directors and then the ABFM does a survey of residency graduates. And we were able to connect those behind the scenes. And now it's coming out that now, like just this next year is when we're going to have the final data to connect the two, because there was obviously a delay between when we're surveying PDs about their curricula, waiting several years for residents to graduate and get the graduate survey. But I think that'll be really amazing to look at, like what do the program directors say is in their residency curricula? What are their graduates actually doing in practice? What has the most impact? We've also done topic surveys, like I mentioned that one about program directors and burnout. We did one program director survey where we just asked for submissions on wellness and burnout. This was even before the pandemic, but even at that time, we thought it was such an important topic. But basically, this is just to say, if you have an idea and you're like, oh, this is something that would relate to what CERA is doing, but it's a little different. I wonder if that's possible. Just reach out and ask, because I would love to think about other areas that we could be innovative with this kind of research. Oh, here's my hypothesis part. Boy, I need to put this in the right place. Let me just show you. These are kind of what I was talking about, vague ideas. I wonder if other clerkships teach about chronic pain management. What would be better is what are the factors associated with whether or not chronic pain management curriculum is included in the family medicine clerkship. So just thinking about, you know, not just questions that give you like the percentage. We don't do open-ended questions. We tried it in the beginning of survey, like fill in the blank with this. we didn't get any good data that was really analyzable. So they're really close-ended questions. And if you look on the CERA website, there's even more examples of what makes a good survey question, how CERA counts questions, things like that. So these are some examples of good hypotheses. Survey directors who believe that a particular chronic pain therapy is effective are more likely to teach about that during the clerkship. It's basically like connecting two things. I am definitely open to anyone reaching out about CERA for questions, for wanting to submit a survey, for questions about secondary data analysis, and for your ideas for innovation. And like I mentioned, sometimes people have concerns about CERA. I didn't get accepted to this survey. Why won't they take my topic? I've applied a bunch of times. Please, we're all of the survey directors are people behind the surveys, and we're super happy to help people with those kinds of things. It's not like this is your organization as a member of STFM and these other academic family medicine organizations. So we want to be able to help with these kinds of things. It can be as many as you want. Really, it's more for you thinking about publication. I was always told, and I learned this also through experience, when you're starting a research project, plan out ahead of time the author order, because it's really painful once you're getting ready to publish and like 3 different people think that they're the first author. And even people will, I don't want to say fight, but have disagreements over being the last author, for example. So more just for your group internally to like plan that out ahead of time. For CERA, like, we don't care. I always think proposals are great when they come from multiple institutions, because I have found, like, sometimes I've been a mentor for a group that is from one institution, and sometimes people don't even realize how institution focused their mindset is. They'll be like, oh, of course residents do X. And I'm like, actually, they totally don't. Like, it's just your institution, but they've only been in their institution, so they don't always realize. One other thing related to that is that if you have people that you're working with who have a lot of research experience, they may already be CERA mentors, or they may want to apply, and we just kind of review them and see, make sure they have the research background to be a mentor. You can say on the application, someone is already our CERA mentor, and then you don't get an external mentor. And that can be helpful if your group already has research experience, because I have had, although I love all our CERA mentors, you have this like cohesive group, you've already decided on author order, you've already worked everything out, and then you get this external person who's kind of coming in, and it can be challenging, not always in a bad way, but if you have someone in your group who already would be a mentor, note that, and then we can just have them be assigned. You don't have to be assigned an alternate member. But yeah, I totally agree that more voices get more perspective, and you can really, it can be multiple institutions. That's all totally fine. Sometimes institutions will want you to go through their IRB. So the only challenge with that is like multiple institutions mean multiple IRBs that have opinions on this. Again, these questions do go through the AFP IRB, and most institutions are fine with that. But caution, if you have like 5 different places, 1 out of the 5 may be like, no, we want to review it too. What are the others of you thinking of? Because, one thing I struggled with as like a new family medicine faculty is I thought, I am interested in everything. I don't want to focus on one area. I want to be good at everything. And I've found for research and scholarship, it is good to have an area to focus on. I'm very interested in women's health and reproductive health, and it is helpful to have an area that you get known at, although it's still fine to keep things broad. But it is good as you all think about planning your kind of research and scholarship for the future? Is there an area that you would like to be more focused on, even though you maintain your kind of broad family medicine interests? Not off the top of my head, and that is a great topic. Although I would say there's a lot of CERA surveys, so please don't take my word for it. Please go. We're trying to make it, more searchable and use mesh terms, and make it easier to find what's been done in prior surveys. But that, to me, that would be a really interesting topic. Could be for program directors about what they, what their programs do, but also for chairs, is there any kind of built-in faculty development of teaching in their department? Or for general membership, have people ever had this kind of peer evaluation of their teaching, or what would they think about peer evaluation of their teaching? I think it's great.